Okay, we are back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, legends, wherever you are in the world. We are back with Katie, our in-house psychotherapist, and we're going to speak about today about menopause. Welcome, Katie, back onto the podcast.
Hi, how you doing?
All good. And if you didn't catch the last episode, go into your app, check it out through the community. I think we even posted it on the WhatsApp community. These are very detailed, and it's a good chance for us to kind of just have a more of a conversation. Katie is also, as you know, she's got a lot of trainings within the training portal, but these are conversational. And if you could have these without the video, just stick them on almost like a podcast, listening through earphones when you're traveling, when you're walking on the treadmill, whatever you're doing your cardio. But these are, we're going to dig through some absolute gold today. So menopause, Katie.
Yeah.
Obviously, you deal with it a lot in terms of the psychological aspect of it.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot as coaches in the physiological side of things. So we both have our expertise, and that's going to blend quite nicely together.
Yeah.
We're going to have a chat through everything. So we both know perimenopause isn't just about hot flashes and missing cycles, right? We see a lot in the community and in our daily coaching that transition both physically and mentally. It's a tough time for women, and a lot of it is misunderstood still at this time, still however many years later. And a lot of it is misunderstood by partners, men.
Yeah.
So today I want to talk about both physical and mental side of things. What's actually going on with your bodies as a female, how it affects the way you think, you act, you interact, and most importantly, what can they do to feel like they can get back onto a fairly level ground. So first part we're going to speak about today, got my notes in front of me, is what is actually going on. Okay. So Katie, do you know, I mean, you're probably very aware in terms of the physiological side of things as well as the psychological things in terms of menopause, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I see people, it presents in both obviously the psychological and the physical, but they definitely overlap, don't they? So yeah, I see a lot of
Yeah.
people struggling with like obviously the mood swing side of things, the emotions, the anxiety, peaking, sleep disturbances, the problems with like struggling to lose weight, wanting to eat more, fatigue, brain fog, memory problems. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Anger, irritability, confidence, so many different psychological symptoms.
Yeah. I think you listed off about 15 to 16 of however many symptoms that can turn up during perimenopause. Now, menopause in the Western circle is average age around about 50, 51. That's when you will achieve full menopause, which essentially is 12 months without your cycle. But perimenopause symptoms can start up to 11 years prior to that. So we have clients within the community and people that we've worked with that have started to experience perimenopausal symptoms at 37, 38. So it's not something you need to be aware of. And you are in the right place because obviously you are in a place that supports your mental side of things and obviously physical side of things. Because I've always said the best way you can go into perimenopause will mean the best way you can handle it both physically and mentally.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Katie, what tends to happen psychologically for women during perimenopause? Why do so many feel like they are, I guess, kind of strangers in their own body?
It's change. So they've been used to kind of functioning in a particular way, being able to do things in a particular way, and then it's that constant change. Okay, and I can't do things in the way that I perhaps was, handling that, navigating how we can adapt and do things differently. The pressure that we put on ourselves as well. So we're putting pressure on ourselves to still do things in a particular way, but actually it's, learning to navigate that and the acceptance of that actually things are different and we're changing. So we've got to be able to do things in a different way. And that's hard, isn't it? I mean, it's hard for anyone if you've been used to doing things in a certain way and then it changes.
100%. And can we talk a little bit about that kind of identity shift as well? Because that's what we hear a lot, and that's quite very common with perimenopausal women when they're going through that shift. Why do so many high-performing women feel emotionally off? Everything looks fine on the outside, but internally they're really struggling.
Yeah, it's the lack of confidence that it hits the confidence that we experience. Like I said before, we're used to feeling confident in ourselves, and then all of a sudden there's all of these physiological changes happening which we haven't got the control over. I think that's a huge part of it, is not having the control. So it's not being able to sort of instantly identify what is having an impact, not being able to see it, not really even being able to kind of know unless you go down like the medical route. And so you haven't got that control. You've just got to sort of work with how your body's presenting, and that's difficult when you haven't got control over something, especially when you're used to being a high performing person who has that element of control over lots of things. So it's like somebody else is sort of in control.
I exactly hit the nail on the head. I always say you are, when you're going through, like you're saying, is like very bad cycles through your late luteal phase when people suffer with, bad PMS. It's essentially, and it's that, but daily, consistently for quite a long period of time. And I always say, like, it's, you're currently a passenger. Like, hormones are the driver in that part of your life. You are currently a kind of passenger. What you can do to make that process a little bit easier is obviously, yes, down the medical route, but really down the medical route, you are looking at, all the kind of prescriptions and the supplementations and stuff that you get on the shelf are fairly worthless, to be honest, and then definitely not going to fix the root cause. It does come down fundamentally to hormones. Hormones are essentially what is causing all of the symptoms to a lessened or a worse degree, and that's kind of where you have to start. But I'm sure you are aware, Katie, that we have clients going in feeling like they are suffering with perimenopausal symptoms, going into the doctor, getting a blood test, sometimes even a Dutch test, and nothing really comes up. Their hormones haven't really that shifted. So symptoms can come on before they start to show up in blood tests.
Yes. Definitely. It's just navigating that, isn't it? And looking at what you have got control over rather than what you haven't got control over. Like, the more you get caught up on, or I'm experiencing this, I haven't got control over it, then the worse it ends up getting, and more you get stuck in that cycle.
And what do they have? What, if someone listening to this now and thinking, I'm completely out of control, what do they have still within their control? What can they focus on?
What you can do in your day-to-day life. And if you're sort of noticing, and it has to be on such a small scale as well. Like, people often think that it's all about like huge, big life shifts. And of course, it's not about that. It's just about like, okay, day to day, I'm noticing, my sleep pattern's really shifted. So what you have got control over is, the times that you go to bed and you get up, and what you do in the day to, I know we're going to come on to this, what you do in the day to kind of keep your stress levels at check as well. That's what you've got the control over. Whereas if we haven't got control over the hormonal shifts. So what I always say to people, like, if they're experiencing any of the menopause symptoms, your hormones are going to do what they're going to do, but the more in control of everything else you are, the easier that is to navigate those shifts. Like, you're still going to experience them, but if you're on top of the cortisol, the stress hormones a little bit more, if you're creating more of those good neurotransmitters more, then that is easier. Because if you imagine you've got all of the other cortisol, adrenaline thrown in the mix, all of the other hormones like the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone just goes woof, even more so than it already is, and then that's what makes it harder.
100%. And moving on to kind of part two, which leads us nicely into kind of the stress, the cortisol, the mood swings, because these are all obviously dictated by the main drivers, sexual hormones, mostly being estrogen and progesterone, the ones that have the biggest shift during perimenopause. So during perimenopause, obviously cortisol gets harder to regulate. You are producing more, and I will go into this a little bit more later on in part 4, but you are producing more. It becomes harder to regulate. Poor sleep, increased belly fat, redisposition, which again, I will go into later, the reasons behind that, slower recovery. The body's basically in a constant low level of stress, which we discussed on the last episode. So, Katie, question to you. What's actually going on mentally when women feel more anxious, irritable, or emotionally drained? If nothing's majorly changed externally, what is kind of going on the internal?
So the cortisol's naturally higher, as you just said, and when the cortisol is higher, then that lowers the estrogen levels more, which then has an impact on your mood and also your serotonin production as well. So if anyone doesn't know, serotonin is generally the main, what we call feel-good neurotransmitter that keeps us in balance. So the higher the cortisol, the lower the estrogen, the lower the serotonin. That's when you're going to feel a little bit sort of like lower in mood, angry, irritable, lower in confidence, all of those things that basically we don't want to feel. It will also lower the progesterone as well, so that it's basically, you see it as like the higher the cortisol, the lower those two hormones. Then the progesterone is what will have an impact on more of the physical symptoms as well, such as like the fatigue, the migraines. Obviously, if you are then experiencing fatigue, any physical symptoms, you're naturally going to feel a little bit worse in yourself mentally, aren't you? Because, of course, as we all do anyway.
Domino effect.
Yeah, and then the cortisol will affect the sleep pattern. Again, like the sleep is huge. If you're not getting a good quality and quantity sleep, particularly your REM sleep is your main mental processing that you have. You wake up, you feel rubbish, you feel more anxious, more stressed. Everything else is all that big vicious cycle. And then it's, it's, as I said, sorry, it depletes all of your good neurotransmitter levels, like your serotonin, your oxytocin, everything that you basically need in balance to function as you should.
And that's a direct cause of lower estrogen, essentially. Estrogen is directly kind of correlated with serotonin and your neurotransmitters.
Yeah, both the estrogen and the progesterone. Yeah. And then the testosterone will link with like higher sort of like anger, irritability, that sort of thing as well. Yeah. It's
so,
all.
I mean, obviously,
Go on.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say it's all just a vicious cycle, really. And like you said before, just that domino effect. If one thing's happening and it has an impact on those other hormones, it has an impact on your mood, your sleep. If your sleep's worse, it's all just that cycle.
Yeah. A vicious cycle, which we will come on to some more solution-based stuff towards the end. But I mean, from a kind of coaches and a physiological background in terms of what I have through dealing with women with menopause and perimenopause, I feel it is all hormonal, but a question to you: is it partly mental overload that so many women are carrying as well?
Yeah, do you know what? This is the hardest thing. And it's really, really hard for people to sort of differentiate between what is stress and what is menopause. And I think menopause is also quite particularly perimenopause is quite a buzzword at the moment. So I also think that lots of people will sort of, jump within that. And of course we have stuff going on hormonally, but that then tends to make us slightly less aware of what's going on in our lives as well. So it's just being really aware that actually if things have slipped, like habits have slipped, or because of hormonal shifts you're not able to do things in the same way, that you do need to kind of adapt and keep things balanced in your brain. And yes, of course, if you're overworked, if you're overwhelmed, if you're busy, if you're on the go all the time, which in modern day life, let's be fair, most of us are to some extent anyway, like those things are still going to play a part. And like I mentioned earlier, that is then when you're going to deal with even worse hormone fluctuations than what you would be anyway. So it's just being really conscious of, actually, like I said earlier as well, what are you in control of, what are you not in control of? How can you start to kind of recognize little things that can make a difference? Because even if you say you're going through all those hormone fluctuations, and even if you weren't experiencing, if you say that you were still busy, you're doing your job and everything else, and that maybe wasn't a problem then, but now you are experiencing these hormone fluctuations, it's probably just a time to be a little bit more aware of, okay, I do need to make a little bit of a shift now to make it easier to manage. It's not necessarily that things have changed, but it's actually, I need to make a little bit of a change now because this is the stage of life that I'm at. This is what my hormones are doing at the moment, and I need to work with them. It's working with them rather than working against them.
Yeah, that's a big one. Working with it goes directly back into training. Like, I'll speak a bit more of this in terms of the following parts of this call, but a lot of the time when women go into perimenopause, and we're talking about kind of body composition, obviously when their body fat starts to increase, and there's a couple of reasons, both lifestyle and hormonal, why that happens. We're going to go into that later. But they tend to then drive in. It's like your body has changed and you need to adapt to that change. Everything that worked 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago in terms of body composition and even potentially stress management and stuff that you used to do to control yourself may not work now. Again, it's just adapting to the current environment. I think that's what makes it even more challenging, that they feel completely lost in terms of where they are currently, because everything that they've learnt and done in the past is now fairly redundant. They have to essentially not only almost find a new self-image, but also deal with the changes that they're going through and trying to, again, high-performing women, they want to, they when they start to increase in body fat, when body fat distribution starts to shift, it affects self-confidence, it affects their mood, it makes everything, as we said, in that vicious circle, get a little bit harder to manage. So obviously they want to reverse that. So then they go into almost making the issues worse, trying to fight against their hormones rather than actually working with them to find a stable solution. Because people, high-performing women, they don't want to pull back. They're like, they've always been taught, if you want something, you need to give more. And it's one of the hardest things we face as coaches during that time, is telling someone who's been super active, training, great, and managing to recover, when they are essentially in their worst body composition, to pull back and to use mindfulness and use breath work and all this kind of stuff to manage their symptoms so their body will become a little bit more responsive. It's tough.
It's so hard.
It's a tough conversation to have, and even tougher to actually start. But again, it's one of those things, Katie, that with everything, once you start to actually, start to take it on board and make small acute changes that actually lead to positive momentum, you then start to understand, because essentially everyone is just wanting a change and they're wanting progress. And once they start to see that progress, they understand, and then they start to make better actions, start to listen to their people that are telling them this is a good thing a little bit more. And then, it starts to snowball in a positive momentum after that.
It's hard because it's like, if you get older and a particular part of your body isn't working in the same way, obviously it's hard, but you adapt to it and you make those changes. But when it's internally, you can't see it, and I think that's why it's so much harder, because on the outside, everything pretty much is the same. You can't see those hormone fluctuations, so it's much harder to then adapt in the ways that you should, because you can't see it. But if you think about it, like if it was a physical thing that you could see, then you would do it, wouldn't you? So
100%. And it's one of the biggest shifts that women go through. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said it's not, you can't physically see anything. So people around you, husbands, partners, wives, children, friends, they can't see physically anything's changed, but it's something has changed dramatically. And that's why a lot of, marriages suffer, relationships suffer during menopause, because number one, the woman is not really understanding what's happening and passing it off as other symptoms or other reasons. And the husband has no understanding of what even a cycle is generally, let alone perimenopause and the fluctuations that go through there. So they're almost just taking it as it's just this part of a life, and it's just an extended cycle. So there's a lot of confusion. And for anyone who is in a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship, females, what you've got to understand, that not only do women go through bad cycles, and there are certain conversations that you might want to have with them at a better time, but also through perimenopause and menopause, this is consistent. So I think, like everything, education and understanding is absolute key. So moving on to a big one, because I know this is what a lot of people are going to be interested in, is the belly fat. Why does that happen? It's one of the biggest, I guess, complaints and annoyances during perimenopause. And this is down to a few things, like hormones is where it starts. Estrogen essentially is partly regulates fat storage. And it regulates fat storage in a way that, as you see with most women, they hold most of their body fat through their lower body. So that's where it regulates body fat storage. That's just a good level of estrogen in the body. When estrogen levels start to drop, the fat starts to redistribute. So it's sometimes not even that people are putting on more body fat or their body fat is going up. They're just redistributing. Lower estrogen, therefore leading more into the male parameters of sexual hormones, not even close to where a male is. But lower estrogen means they start to hold body fat, and body fat starts to redistribute through their midsection. Also, what happens with this is estrogen also helps regulate insulin sensitivity. So when estrogen levels drop, insulin sensitivity, your body becomes less able to process carbohydrates. Blood sugar levels are not optimized. Cortisol increases due to this. And also with higher cortisol, lower estrogen, therefore higher cortisol, your body becomes more prone to visceral fat. Now, visceral fat is the fat around your organs, also through this midsection. So this is why the reasons why women notice increase in belly fat, because of increase in visceral fat, a decrease in insulin sensitivity down to, and also a redistribution of body fat because of fundamentally a drop in estrogen, and therefore affecting a rise in cortisol. And then lifestyle factors, which make it even worse, because of all this is going on with high cortisol, we've spoken about before: poor sleep, lacking recovery. They want to do more, which essentially emphasizes the issues they're currently facing, which increases systemic cortisol. What does that do? Increases hunger hormones like ghrelin. So they tend to then start to overeat. So that puts them into a calorie surplus, and therefore they are gaining fat, not only redistributing, they are gaining body fat. So that is the physiological side of belly fat increase. I want to go more into the psychological side of it now, Katie. So we know what happens physically. What happens mentally when women stop recognizing their body?
Confidence just drops.
Big one.
Yeah, confidence in yourself. Why? Questioning it, thinking like, I'm doing all of these things, why isn't it working? Which then, that in turn, like the way you think about it, creates even more stress. Like you've said, then trying to do even more to change things, which probably physically isn't going to do anything, but then mentally you're putting more load on yourself and getting stuck in that cycle with that. Just the constant questioning. Obviously then they're looking in the mirror, analysing, the obsessive state over it, just getting caught in that cycle with it all. It's hard, because again, you're like, why is it happening? Why? Don't understand. And so it's good that you've explained that, because I didn't know that side of things either. From the
I mean, there's definitely a physical side of things. I mean, it's perimenopause, menopause. It's the hormone. Essentially, the lead indicator normally, as I said before, but sometimes it's not so much and doesn't show up in the bloods, is a drop in estrogen. That is estrogen and progesterone, the female's main sexual hormones, the ones that regulate their monthly cycle, the one that had done for the last 30, 40 years, and then suddenly they start to deplete. It's going to have a ginormous impact on the body. And when these things change, and it's always like, and then women say, oh, but menopause is actually better. Well, yes, because once you've reached menopause and you start having a cycle for 12 months, which is effectively what menopause is, that is your hormones fairly settled. Now, whether you've been on HRT or whether you haven't, your hormones are settled. When your hormones are settled, even if progesterone and estrogen are at a lower level and probably not optimized, because they are settled, you will be in a better state and you will not notice as many symptoms, side effects. But because during perimenopause, because of the fluctuations, that is what causes that knock-on effect, and that's what causes all these both physiological, psychological, and adaptable changes within and externally and through the mindset, right?
Yeah, and comparison is a huge one as well. Like, not necessarily comparison with other people, but comparison with your former self as well. Like, even just like from a couple of years ago, like, oh, I looked that way. I don't look that way anymore. And then comparison to obviously everything that you see online and friends, that sort of thing. It's massive. Getting your own head about it. Yeah,
100%. A little, I wouldn't say tip, because I know it's a lot more than just a tip, in terms of how women can start to rebuild their confidence and self-trust in themselves, in terms of, so that reflection doesn't always match how they feel inside.
Yeah. acceptance, which is obviously a massive statement, but building
Mm.
that slowly in terms of like, what am I achieving right now? Looking at, what am I doing well? What am I, sorry, still managing to achieve? Looking at, what you are doing well. Again, a bit of a cliche, but positive self-talk, like looking at
Mm.
yourself and telling yourself, pointing out what you do like about yourself rather than what you don't. If you're constantly looking in the mirror every day and you're just pointing out like that bit of belly fat that won't shift, that is
Mm.
literally all you're going to see every day. Whereas if you're then looking at, okay, this part of me looks good, or I look good in a particular outfit, then the more you start to see those things, the more you start to notice them, sorry, the more you start to find of them. And then that over time builds new ways of thinking about yourself as well. I mean, the
Yeah.
comparison aspect, like social media is obviously a huge one, like unfollowing things that are just making you feel
Yeah.
crap about yourself. I know it seems obvious, but that's it, like that's a massive one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. 100%. And how much, I mean, and just I want to put the premise on it, because a lot of it women feel when they, and this is the rhetoric that they've been told when they are going through these changes and they're going to hit menopause, that is it for women. As not their life is over, but essentially if they ever want to kind of, they're told by even some of their GPs and their doctors, like, this is you now, you have to just accept it. Yes, you have to accept it, but there will be a way out. And when
Yeah.
it comes down to body composition, yes, we said this before, what you did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago will not work for you now physically in terms of changing your body composition. But that belly fat you see, that increase in body fat, still has very much the potential to go. You can still grow muscle, you can still lose fat, you haven't lost the ability for your body to metabolize and oxidize fat. Its laws of thermogenics still work, but the rules have changed. So I always say kind of like, you're on the same, you're still playing the same game, but the rules have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
else you want to add to that, Kate?
Yeah, it's what like going back to what we said earlier about adapting your lifestyle to make it work for you. Like, look at,
Mm.
okay, where am I today? What are the main little things that actually would start to make a bit of a difference in me feeling better in myself? So, for example, is it that you're constantly feeling overworked? If it's that, then just one small little thing that's going to make a difference in your day, that's just going to kind of build in a pocket of time for you to slow down a little bit, because what you want to
Yeah.
do from a mental perspective is you want to reduce the cortisol from life so
Yeah.
that you can manage everything else in a better way. So it's just those really small little changes, even in terms of like, okay, being a little bit more organized, or better bedtime wake routine, like anything that is going to start to just have a small impact
Yeah.
will start to
Is
make
it
a
is
bit of a
it fair,
difference.
is it fair to say that nothing is going to feel 100% normal during this time, but there will be a way out, and what the best solution is management?
Yeah. But I think that's
Yeah.
that's for general life as well, though, isn't it? Like, not just the
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause. Like,
Yeah.
nothing's going to be feel like 100% all the time. It's just feeling that you
Yeah.
are, as in control of life as you possibly can be, and knowing that if like bigger
Mm.
things crop up, you can handle them in the best possible way that you're
Yeah.
able to. But there's always a way out with everything, isn't there? Like, I know when you're in something, you feel stuck and like it's never going to end, but reflect back to everything else that you've managed to
Mm.
get through. Like, you will get through it. It's just navigating a new normal. Having, positive relationships around you is key, like being able to talk openly to people, positive communication, whether that's friends, family, whether that's work, and having understanding from your boss or whatever it is. All of those things just to help you to manage as best that you possibly can.
And just a question on that, Katie, in terms of like menopause, obviously, I mean, I know what I know in terms of feedback that we get from clients, but obviously you get a lot of feedback from the kind of women you work with through perimenopause. Um, how understanding is like the workplace and bosses and husbands and support structure when a woman would go to them and say, look, this is what I'm going through? Like, there's still a lack of education, I think, but how much understanding is there these days?
Understanding and education, I would probably say not that much.
Mm.
I think it completely varies from employer to how well they manage it. Like I've had people from the extreme of like, yeah, being able to be really flexible working or whatever it is, like that they need to adapt, to the complete other end where I think menopause wasn't even mentioned and they had sent an email out with all of this information about how to navigate menopause. Which, like, from a male boss who they hadn't even, she hadn't even said she was struggling, and he'd just sent her a load of information because, yeah, because of how her mood had presented. So I've never really heard like anybody like speak about whether they've had any sort of like specific training or anything like that, or open conversations at work, to be fair. I think there's a lot more about like the mental health side of it and managing stress and things. I don't think I've heard it spoken about as much in terms of,
no, I don't think it
is. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that, yes, the whole world has shifted a little bit in terms of understanding people's struggles and understanding the importance of supporting mental health in the workspace and outside. But yeah, when it comes down to menopause and cycles, they're still very much misunderstood by a lot of people, even women. And they go into perimenopause not really understanding anything about them and still having that. I think it's very much this generation as well, kind of our generation who are currently moving into the age when they are, because we still have that old rhetoric from GPs back in the days and mothers. Like, I got to put it honest. I had I don't think I'm going to ask my father, but I don't think he was ever aware of my mother going through menopause. It was just something that just kind of happened, and they took it on the head and just said, well, this is what it is. I don't think she had any help through it, both from a medical standpoint or support. It's just kind of what dealt with. At least now there's a little bit more understanding, and there are people that you can reach out to, and there are specialists in the field. Yeah. Which is a massive positive.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm just going to finish on one little bit very quickly in terms of mindset tools and daily anchors. This goes on to, as we said, like just general stress management. And I think a lot of people get intimidated or put off, or just like, oh, I don't want to do that, because they think they're going to have to like meditate for an hour or journal every day, 12 pages. But most of the time, a lot of the time, in fact, I would say every time, it's about the small things compounding when it comes to this, right?
Yeah, definitely. Identifying what works for you as well, because not one thing is going to work for absolutely everybody. That's why, like what I said before about look at your life and look at the little things that you need to make a change to, and that's going to change anyway as you go through life. Something that worked before isn't going to work anymore, and you've just got to kind of look at, okay, where I am now, what needs to shift. But in terms of general things that are going to help, I think at this point in life, organization is a huge thing that people find really, really helps. So even if it is just like, write a to-do list every day. I know that some of these things sound really simple and silly, but they honestly make a big difference, especially if you're going through that brain fog side of things. Just having things written down, ticking things off, using post-it notes, things like that. Have a good sleep routine. I know, again, it sounds obvious, but it does make a big difference, like going to bed at the same time, winding down, all of those things that we know make a difference, but they actually do. Looking at actually what you are achieving every day. I know I mentioned it last time, but just keep a little log every day of the things that have gone well, the things that have been good. Good wake-up routine as well. If you're starting the day rushing into everything, that is just the biggest recipe for disaster. But so many people do it.
Everyone.
You're right. We all do. But honestly, that is what spikes cortisol, because there's already a cortisol increase in the morning because we need it to wake us up. But then if you throw a load of other cortisol on top of that then is just, it has that knock-on effect for the rest of your day. So really starting to think about how you're waking up, how you're getting up, just building in a little bit of time. And like you said, it's not that you have to build in half an hour every morning to meditate. It's just like, am I going to give myself an extra 10 minutes to finish my coffee or whatever it is? Just being really reflective on those 100%. Things.
Organization, 100%. I think it's like with anything, with training and what we do in terms of the physical standpoint, it's I wouldn't say it's hard to convince, but yeah, it's hard to, because there is a sense of delayed gratification when it comes to these small things and these small actions. They aren't an immediate benefit. It's not like if I do this, if I do my nightly routine, dimming the lights, turning off, like not looking at screens now before bed, eating, make sure I have my, we do all of these things leading into good. It does not automatically mean after 6 months of terrible sleep that you are going to sleep like a baby for 9 hours and wake up feeling refreshed. It's not that quick. These small actions that are done consistently build up, create momentum, and then with time you just start to notice things improving a little bit. Like we're not trying to get everything absolutely perfect in 1 week or 1 day just by doing these things. It does take a little bit of what's the word?
Consistency.
Consistency, and that delayed gratification, that understanding that I know if I do these things consistently, I will start to notice the benefits.
Yeah. Can I just really quickly just explain an analogy that's really helpful for that?
100%.
So if you think about two different pathways in the snow or the sand, so one pathway is footprints in the snow that are really embedded. It's really easy to walk down that one. You've gone down it loads of times before. The other pathway is completely fresh snow. So to start walking down that new one, it's really uncomfortable to do it at first. Like you've got to really push those footprints in. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and you take one footprint at a time. So that's how your brain works in terms of like forming new habits, behaviors, ways of thinking. So you'll have all of those pathways in your brain which are really embedded, and there'll be loads of them that are for helpful things, but there'll also be things that are unhelpful, but we've ended up repeating that habit pattern of behavior. So to start doing something differently and form a new one, it's just think about, right, first set of footprints and the next and the next, and that discomfort is there at first, but the more you do it, the more you build it up, the easier it becomes, and then that old pathway gets covered up. So it's just a nice way of thinking about
an ultimate analogy. A perfect way to finish us up. So I appreciate your time as ever, Katie. We will be back in a couple of weeks with our next topic, yet to be aligned. But Katie, I have to look over here to say thank you to you. I really appreciate you so much. Guys, girls, women, I hope you get a lot from this. As ever, please, if you get any value from this, something stands out, pop her in the WhatsApp group, in the community, general chat, tag me, tag Katie, and we'd love to hear from you. Anyway, thanks, Katie. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye.